Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Sci-Fi Movie Guy. And I'm calling this the Butchering of Batman v Superman theatrical release. And the reason I'm calling this that is because I just watched Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition, and this is the movie that I wanted to see. This was the movie they should have released in the theaters, but the studio decided that they couldn't handle a 3-hour movie in the theaters. So instead, they told Zack Snyder, after he had a perfectly, unbelievably great movie, to cut it from 3 hours to 2.5 hours. And he had no choice. And I'll bet he was just sitting there every time somebody slagged the movie, saying, that's not the movie I wanted to release, but that's the movie the studios. But you know what? He didn't do that. He was a team player. He said, no, this is the movie, kind of. And you know what? He backed the studio. And he was a super team player. This guy deserves street cred beyond belief for putting up with all the crap that he did. But this is such an awakening for him, and I'm sure a redemption, to see his true movie finally get released to the public. And it is phenomenal. I'll give you my rating at the end, but I would like to tell you before I start spoiling the hell out of this will be a spoilers review. So if you haven't seen Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition, I would recommend you save this movie for later and come back to it after you've watched it, because it is phenomenal. So the first thing I'd like to say is, if you didn't like it in the theaters, give it another go. Watch the Ultimate Edition, because it is great. Now, I liked it in the theaters. I thought it was a good movie, not a great movie. Now, the Ultimate Edition, I think it's a great movie. I'll give you my rating at the end, like I said, but the theatrical version I rated, when I first saw it, 8 out of 10. Then I rated it 7.5 out of 10 the second time I watched it. And each time I watched it after that, it got a little bit worse and worse. Even though I still did like the film, there was a lot of problems, and 90% of the problems I had with this movie was the way it was edited. Well, now I know. Zack Snyder didn't want to edit it that way. He was forced to edit it that way. So let's get into this movie. The opening sequence, where they actually show the death of Bruce Wayne's parents, is extended a little bit, and it just gives you a little more insight how they were killed. I didn't mind it at all. I like the story. I thought it was great for new viewers to see, and it's longer. It makes more sense. It's not so metaphorical as the theatrical version was. It's now telling the story, and it's great. And as I said, I was a little worried when I saw it in the theaters and he was going up with the bats, but then you see it's a dream and it's fine. Then we get into the opening sequence of the Metropolis scene, where Bruce Wayne is looking at all the events that happened in Man of Steel from his point of view, and that is way better. They have way more action. It's rated R now, so they were able to show more of the blood and more of the people dying, and really gets you invested into why Batman hates Superman so much. Then we get into a lot of Clark Kent's story, which I was missing in the theatrical version. I thought it was too heavily focused on Batman. Now it's pretty much equal to both of them. And so this helps me at the end when Superman dies, because I'm so much more invested in Clark Kent and Superman that you're actually feeling very sad when you see Superman die. And the death scene is way more impactful when he dies, because they've added some to that too. And you get to see more of the fight with Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman. And the part where he goes, I thought she was with you. I thought she was with you. That's even a little bit more extended. And so it makes more sense why he's asking him that, because of the way that they show her come in. It's not just she comes in, stops the thing, and then they ask each other. So really greatly done that way. Lois Lane, she has a bigger part in this movie now, and you really see the reporter in her, and she's digging for a story. And I said that in my previous review, but it's even better now. And the magic bullet, they get way more in depth into that, into how they find out where it comes from and the studying of it. And they've got this lab tech who I think is going to show up in Justice League as either a new superhero or supervillain. I'm not sure. They were kind of teasing this girl in there. So we'll see how that goes. Bruce Wayne, they show even more of how Lex Luthor manipulated Bruce Wayne. And they show that he's manipulating Superman as well. And a lot of people out there said that they didn't need to kidnap Superman's mom. But I think they did, because Superman is just too good and rah-rah USA, and he would never actually try to kill Batman. He would try to capture him, put him in jail, see justice done. So in order to get them to fight like this, they had to give him a little bit more motivation than they did Batman. Batman was a little easier manipulated because he's human, and he's seen 20 years of crap in Gotham City, and he just thinks that Superman could be the death and destruction of the planet or any Kryptonian, so that's why he's going after him. So that made perfect sense. And the way that they show Lex Luthor manipulating every little piece of detail in order to get up to the big fight is so much better in the Ultimate Edition. Then we get into that desert scene at the beginning where you don't really understand why they're blaming Superman for all those people dying. Well, in the Ultimate Edition, you figure it out really quickly. They set it up so much better. And the one thing they kept cutting out of the movie that I noticed is people started finding out throughout this movie that Lex Luthor was responsible for all of this. That was all cut out in the theatrical version, so that's why you're like, oh my goodness, it was just so choppy the way it was edited. And I owe Zack Snyder a huge apology, because I said, Zack Snyder, you cut this film awfully. Well, now I know that you were forced to do that by the studio, because they couldn't handle a 3-hour movie in the theater. Well, I'm here to tell you that you should have let him release what he wanted to release, because it was amazing. Zack Snyder, I think that the whole world owes you an apology for all the people that said this movie was awful, because you sat back after the studio told you to cut this movie the way you didn't want to cut it, and you were a team player. You didn't schlag the studio. You didn't say anything negative. You kept saying, oh, you know what? No, we're looking forward to Justice League. And yes, I know this movie was a success as far as money. I think it made $890 million. But if this version had been released in the theaters, it would have made over $1 billion easily. And you know what? I don't think people would have minded sitting through a 3-hour movie, because when I sat through the 2.5-hour version in the theater, I said before, what happens is you'd just be building a climax, and then you'd start a new scene and build a climax and start a new scene and build a climax and start a new scene. And in this one, it was just a nice slow progression, just a nice slow to the climax after climax. And then bam, it hits you in the face. So just like I think a movie should. And now it does in the Ultimate Edition. We need to talk about Steppenwolf. They cut it out of the theatrical version, but he doesn't only create Doomsday in that pit. Once Doomsday goes out and starts fighting everybody, he's creating another villain in there, and it's a cool villain. It's Steppenwolf, and you get to see him for about 10 seconds. And I hope they're setting that up to be in Justice League as one of the villains, because I'd love to see this character. But again, so many little pieces were cut out. Like I said in my spoiler review of the theatrical version of Batman v Superman, that I didn't really feel anything for Doomsday because it was so quickly done and he's out there fighting, and I wasn't invested in the character, so I didn't really care that they were fighting. But the way that they now show him creating Doomsday, it's way better. And also, the Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman fight scene is way better. The beginning opening sequence in Metropolis, where they show Bruce Wayne's version of what happened in the Man of Steel at the end, is longer, more action. It's definitely, this is a rated R movie, because a lot of the fight scenes are way bloodier, and you hear bones cracking, and Batman is just a badass. like, he's the most badass Batman that we've ever seen on the theater. And I'm hearing for the Justice League, Zack Snyder wants to make the Justice League more family friendly, and he wants to make it, with a little bit of humor, which I'm okay with, because that's what made Captain America Civil War such a great success, is it had the right elements of fighting, it had the right elements of humor, all mixed in. And I think Zack Snyder has redeemed himself with this Ultimate Edition, even though it's a super dark rated R movie. Now I am so happy that this studio is in his hands, and that hopefully they've learned from their mistake on Batman v Superman, and now they're going to let him cut the next movie the way that he wants to cut it. Now, the funeral scene at the end, it's much longer, and it makes much more sense about the Justice League setup, because Wonder Woman and Bruce Wayne are talking about how they're going to put together the Justice League. And again, you know what? It's just 30 seconds added onto a scene here, a minute added onto a scene there, 30 seconds here, but it just explains the whole story. So if you didn't like Batman v Superman in the theaters, please go out and watch the Ultimate Edition and give it another chance, because it's worth it. This movie is now in my top 5 superhero movies of all time. It's right up there with Captain America Civil War, Batman the Dark Knight, Superman Man of Steel, The Avengers. So, yeah, this movie is fantastic. Now I'm giving it a 9.5 out of 10, because this is the movie that I always wanted to see, and it's the movie I was expecting to see when I went to the theater, and it wasn't the movie that I got in the theaters. So again, I'm going to apologize once more to Zack Snyder for saying you cut this movie horribly, because now I know it wasn't your fault. This is the movie you wanted. That was the movie the studio wanted. So again, the studio butchered Batman v Superman, the theatrical version, and stay the hell out of Zack Snyder's way coming up for these other movies, please, and stay out of the way of all the other directors, and stop meddling. You guys don't know how to direct a movie. That's why you hire a director. Let the director do their job, and you do your job, and just pay for things and get it out in the theaters. And I'll eat my popcorn and watch the movie the director wanted me to see. Okay? Thank you. I'm the Sci-Fi Movie Guy. My name's Mike. If you want to send me an email, you can do that at movieguySci-fi@gmail.com, or please follow me on Twitter at movieguySci-fi. And remember, everybody, nerds rule the world.